Hi, everyone. I'm Keith Mathis with the Mathis Group. We are a premier ATP with the Project Management Institute. Welcome today to 7 Minutes to PMP Mastery. The video we're going to be examining today about the PMP exam is going to focus on types of scheduling in predictive, hybrid, and agile settings. Now, we say 7 minutes, typically it's 7 to 9 minutes. This one might be just a touch longer because there's some key changes that have happened to the PMP test. You want to hear about it with these topics. Let's give you an overview for scheduling. Scheduling is how the project team determines when work will happen, in what sequence, and for how long, and how progress will be measured. Candidates must understand that scheduling is not always a single detailed Gantt chart. The correct schedule approach depends on the project life cycle, the level of uncertainty, and how much the team knows about the work. When we talk about predictive, this is going to be your traditional project. Scheduling is planned in detail before execution. The team defines the activities, they sequence them, they estimate the durations, they develop the schedule model, and manage performance against a baseline. It's used when the scope is stable, the work can be planned in advance. Milestone schedule is useful for executives, but does not show enough detail typically for the project manager and for the team. Also on the test, you'll see something about hybrid projects. Hybrid, it has a combination of predictive and agile. So hybrid projects use both predictive and adaptive approaches. The project may have predictive milestones for governance, funding compliance, or vendors, while agile teams deliver the increments within those milestone boundaries. So you'll see a flavor of both projects on a hybrid project. Agile projects are going to be a little different. They show scheduling as an adaptive sequence. The teams may know all the future work in detail. Scheduling happens through releases, iterations, sprints, backlog refinement, and short-term planning. So let's look at scheduling. We've given you 3 components here, and so this is very important for you. So the first one, as you look at milestones, many of you are familiar with milestones because it's very much part of traditional. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. I just wanted you to be able to see this. Secondly, look at a detailed project plan. Notice that you've got your activity, you've got your duration, your predecessor, and who owns that. That's going to have the traditional flavor to it. And then I want you to notice also the third part, the network schedule precedence diagram. This is where what we used to have to do the forward and backward pass. You no longer have to calculate a forward and backward pass on the PMP exam. But you do sometimes have to be able to look at these and be able to pick these out in the test questions. Also, look up here in the left-hand corner. This is your critical path schedule. This is going to be on a predictive project. And so a lot of times what they'll ask you is, what is the critical path? And your critical path is going to be the longest path, always the longest path through the project. And then you'll notice over here to the right, they're talking about a Kanban board or a Kanban flow-based schedule here. And so I want you to notice that what they have. They have what's in the backlog, what's ready, what's in progress, the review, and what's done. That is a typical question that you'll see on the test for Kanban. And then at the bottom, I want you to notice sprint or iteration. They are exactly the same on the test. And so what you're noticing here is sprints that you are starting to run and how long those sprints are going to run. A couple of things about sprints that will help you as you look at this. Your sprints are going to be typically 1 to 3 weeks. And the other thing is, once a sprint begins, it does not allow changes to happen inside that sprint until it's over with. So one of the things, we've got other videos on Agile, which will give you the process of Agile, but I just want to make sure you caught that there are no changes once a sprint begins. And then in this, we've got velocity based. So I want you to notice how you've got your sprints up here. Notice completed story points. How many story points have been completed? A velocity is nothing more than an average of those story points. And once you use a velocity, then you're starting to then plan future sprints based on that velocity. And so what you're looking at, as you see in this graphic here, 24 story points. So from this point forward, you're planning 24 story points for all future future sprints. And then you'll notice backlog-based scheduling. This is part of Agile as well, because you're looking at the product backlog. The product owner controls the product backlog and ranks it from highest priority to least priority, and then it's broken down into a sprint backlog or an iteration backlog, and the team works with the product owner for that. And then what happens is you then decide these are the features or these are the story points we're going to be doing for the sprint backlog. And after everyone agrees, that sprint will then be started, and you do a 3-week sprint. And then at the very bottom, in case you've not seen this, I want you to see a product roadmap schedule. And so you'll notice the theme, you'll notice the quarters. We've got the quarters listed here. And so this is a high-level time-based view of plan capabilities and strategic directions. And so this is not down in the weeds as many times people make the mistake of doing. So anyway, I want you to be able to see these and have some exposure to it. Common mistakes and PMP exam traps. So let's talk about a few of these. First off, treating every schedule as a fixed Gantt chart. If you do that, you're going to fail the test for sure. They're going to flip-flop between predictive projects, agile projects, and also hybrid projects. Second, trap number 2, changing the predictive schedule without change control. All predictive schedules that you see talked about on your test are going to have change control. It is a command and control process. It must have change control. Agile, no, it does not, because you've got the customer embedded in the team. Hybrid, it depends on the hybrid question. Trap number three, forcing new work into a sprint. They will ask you several questions on the test about forcing new work into a sprint. That does not happen because there are no changes in that sprint. Now, in real life, we do that in many cases, but for the purpose of your test, there are no changes. The team in real life will ask the product owner and say, we're finishing up early, we've got room for a few more things, and many times the product owner and the team will work on it. But for the purpose of your test, no, there are no change orders. Number 4, using velocity as a performance target. Velocity is there to look for an average. It's used for forecasting, not pressuring a team to get to that particular level. So if you're listing 24 features for every sprint, they might hit 22 and they might hit 25. The other thing about velocity, do not take one team's velocity and measure another team. That's going to be a no-no. And then number 5, ignoring dependencies in Agile. You still have dependencies even in Agile, even though you've got flexibility and the ability to make changes in between each iteration, you still have dependencies. You have to build your work in some cases in a particular order. And then trap number 6, selecting escalate too early. They're going to have escalate in a lot of your questions. That is typically not the right answer, because the time you escalate, you have already done several steps before you escalate. You've exhausted your power before you've done that. Iteration H, this is another important piece. This is on your test, your new 2026 test. Definition of Iteration H, it's a short time-boxed cycle in which the team completes a defined set of work from the backlog, delivers a potentially shippable product increment. To make it really understandable here, they are fixing stuff that has been broke on that project. So they're fixing it so that it can be shipped. The Iteration H overview is plan, build, test, review, adapt, but all they're working on is no new work. They're working to get everything working that was part of the project already. And then Agile scheduling and estimation examples. So we're seeing the release schedule, we're seeing story map. You also will have number 3, which is measuring effort, not time. And so they're using a Fibonacci here. And those numbers in Fibonacci, you do want to know that it's not uncommon for them to ask you what the next number is in Fibonacci. And so what you'll notice here is 1, 2, and then 2 and 1, if you add those together, gives you 3. And then 3 and 2 gives you 5. And then if you add 5 and 3 together, it gives you 8. And then if you add 8 and 5 together, it gives you 13. That's how you're going to calculate the Fibonacci. And sometimes they'll ask you about what the next score is. Very simple once you've heard it, but it'll throw you off. And then planning poker and using Fibonacci sequence. What is planning poker? It is an estimating technique. We use the Fibonacci cards, we raise those cards up, and we tell how long we think something will take. We can raise it up to say whether we agree or disagree. It can be used in a variety of ways, but it's called planning poker so that no one person contaminates the estimate of anyone else. Also, number 3, using Fibonacci sequence. You'll notice here they've gone ahead and gone up to number 21. And so once again, 21 plus 13 will tell you what that question mark is. And so I want you to be able to see some of these. I know it's going to be a longer video, but the point is it's very important for you to be able to get all of this under that umbrella of what we're looking at today. Next, let's talk about PERT. This is the only calculation you have on the test. You no longer do calculations for CPI, SPI. None of the calculations are happening except for PERT. So you want to know these two calculations. Optimistic, pessimistic, 4 times the most likely divided by 6. Optimistic, pessimistic, and 4 times. Optimistic, pessimistic, and most likely divided by 3. So you're going to have a divided by 3. I also want you 3, 2, 1. You also will need the PERT formula. This is the only formula you need to calculate. There are no other calculations on here. So all these people who are trying to teach you how to do CPI, SPI, that's not on the 2026 test. But the PERT calculation does come up. But you want to know both of these. So it's optimistic plus 4 times the most likely plus pessimistic divided by 6, or it's pessimistic plus optimistic plus most likely divided by 3. Now, I want you to be able to see both of those and hear both of those because it's very important for you to be able to understand that. Now let's take you into a PMP question. So the project manager is leading a predictive project to install a new manufacturing control system. The project has an approved schedule baseline. During execution, a key activity on the critical path is delayed by 5 days because a required component arrived late from an approved supplier. The project sponsor is concerned and asks the project manager to immediately update the schedule baseline to reflect the new completion date. The team believes the delay may still be coverable by resequencing some remaining work and using schedule compression techniques. What should the project manager do first? A, update the schedule baseline immediately because the activity is on the critical path and the project completion date is affected. B, ask the sponsor to approve overtime so the team can crash the remaining critical path activities. C, escalate the supplier delay to the procurement department and request that the future deliveries be expedited. Or D, analyze the schedule impact, evaluate options such as fast tracking or crashing, and determine whether a formal change request is required. So remember, you're choosing the best answer, not just a right answer. Sometimes there's more than one right answer. So pick your answer. All right, let's see if you got it right. So the correct answer here was D, and a predictive project, and that's what they gave you the impression of this because of the critical path. The schedule baseline is controlled through formal change control. Even though the delay occurred on the critical path, the project manager should not immediately update the baseline. The first step is to analyze the impact and evaluate possible corrective actions. The project manager should determine whether the delay actually affects the final project completion date, whether an available float exists elsewhere in the schedule, whether schedule compression is possible, whether fast tracking or crashing would create unacceptable risk or cost, and whether the approved schedule baseline must be changed, whether a formal change request is needed. This answer reflects real PMP logic for the 2026 test. First, analyze the impact, then determine the appropriate response. And just to give you a little insight into this, every time they talk about escalation, they typically don't escalate first. They analyze, they determine what they've analyzed, and then they escalate down the road, not in the beginning. Now let's look at the other answers you might have chosen. So what about A? A updated the schedule baseline immediately because the activity was on the critical path and the project completion date was affected. This is wrong because the project manager should not update the schedule baseline without following the project's change control process. So that date stays the way it is until you go through a change control. B, ask the sponsor to approve overtime so the team can crash the remaining critical path activities. This is a very tempting answer, but it's premature. You're not there yet. Crashing may be an appropriate schedule compression technique, but the project manager must first analyze the schedule impact and compare options. Crashing can increase costs and may introduce resource risk, quality issues, or even burnout. And then C, escalate the supplier delay to the procurement department and request that future deliveries be expedited. This may be useful later on, but it does not directly address the immediate scheduling decision. The question asks what the project manager should do first, and the project manager must analyze the schedule impact and determine whether corrective action or formal change control is needed. So your PMP trap here, escalation is usually not the first step unless the project manager cannot resolve the issue or lacks the authority to do so. Now, you got other people in your group who are watching, who are getting ready for the PMP test. Introduce them to this video series. We are an ATP with PMI, and this is aligned with the 2026 PMP exam. So this is current information we're talking about on every video. Pass that on to friends, okay? Now, our last slide here, let me thank you so much for watching the video. If I can help you in any way, here's our information and contact information. I do PMP exam prep boot camps every other month virtually. So people will sign in from all over the world to be part of this. I'd love to have you in a group. If I can help you in any other way with project management or project management training, contact me and let's see what we can do, okay? So listen, thank you so much for watching the video. Good luck as you get ready to take your PMP, okay? Have a great day. Bye now.